And thank all of you for coming tonight. Public speaking is something that not necessarily my forte, but I am bridging out and starting new things. I ran into an old friend earlier today, and she's like, "You are one of those people that are constantly reinventing yourself." Mm-hmm. And I would say that's putting these presentations together just really reinforced that that's a very, very true statement, and it'll make more sense here momentarily. But I want to thank you guys for coming tonight, because what we're going to be talking about is this resiliency that we can create from within ourselves. And it's within everyone, and I feel like part of what I'm going to be sharing tonight is my story about how I've gotten to where I am tonight. So with that, we're going to, just a brief history. So I grew up in a family of 7 kids, same mom and dad for all 7 of us, over in Lakeview, Oregon, which is a small ranching community. Grew up on a ranch, very salt of the earth, did our thing the best we could. But my parents weren't always those ones that got along real well. They loved each other, but they didn't necessarily like each other. And so that was an interesting dynamic. And as we have aged, the 7 of us kids have gotten really, really close, and we have a lot of fun together. In fact, we just got back from Canita Hot Springs outside of Warm Springs and spent our annual family weekend out there. So if you have a chance to go, I highly recommend it. It's beautiful and the setting's great. But growing up, we were always taught and raised that we would go to college at some point in time, partially because in Lakeview they have a program called the Daily Fund, Collins McDonald's Fund, and kids that grow up there, if you participate in sports, you keep your grade levels up, you're active in the community, you're eligible for these scholarships that in my era would pay your books and tuition, which was huge. And so I ended up being a recipient of that and got to go to school over at OIT in Klamath Falls and became a dental hygienist, because growing up I wanted to be a teacher. That was my goal, was to teach, and I would sit all my siblings down and give them homework assignments and that whole thing. And but my junior year in high school, after doing a career report, it was like I didn't really want to be a teacher, because I had interviewed my teachers and I asked them if they had it to do over again, would they teach? And more than 80% of them said no. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why? And they said, because we don't get to teach anymore. It's more about pushing papers and testing. And it was like, well, I don't want to be a teacher. So what am I going to do with myself? And my dad's like, why don't you be a dental hygienist? And I'm like, that's a great idea. But I had no idea what a dental hygienist was, because we didn't really afford to go to the dentist. So I did some research, and it's like, oh, I could be a dental hygienist. That'd be kind of cool. And so with that, went to school, got my dental hygiene certification, and my classroom got to change every hour, which was kind of fun. But when we were in school, we were taught that we would, and told that we would burn out within 5 years. And so for the first 4.5 years of my hygiene career, it was like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? Because I'm going to burn out, the clock is ticking, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was fortunate and happened to be working with a local dentist here in town, and we were going through this year-long business development program, and one of the required readings was this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl is a gentleman who survived the Nazi prison camps, because he chose to survive the Nazi prison camps. And I thought, if he could choose to survive the Nazi prison camps, I bet I could choose to be the very best dental hygienist that I could possibly be. And so that's what I did. And it turned into a 36-year career that I absolutely loved. I got to travel and teach colleagues, and it was fulfilling, and it was rewarding, chairside and on a level of working with my colleagues and helping empower them to be better professionals as well. And that led to, when I was also graduating from high school, my mom was diagnosed, or from college, my mom was diagnosed with brain tumors. And it changed and shaped my career as a hygienist, because when she was diagnosed, we were given that you can have surgery, you can do radiation, you can do chemo. But at no point along the way were we given the option to do nothing. And what I can tell you, after witnessing her 13-year survival, which she was given 3 to 5 years to live, I wouldn't wish it on any family, any member. And so as a hygienist, I always felt it was my job to educate patients about their choices, the pros and cons of those choices, and then give them the grace to choose whatever they wanted to do. And that's what they did, and I think that's partially why I was really successful at doing this and being a hygienist. And while I was doing that, I was also going through this whole personal growth thing, because back in the day, I was pretty sure I was the largest, biggest, ugliest, stupidest person that ever lived and walked. And that whole self-love thing was something that was foreign to me. And I had to learn that, and working with counselors, and also going through Wings seminars out of Eugene. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's a really beautiful program. And so I was doing this study along the way, and it's like, this is amazing. And they had, like, at the time, and they're still active today, but there was like a 3-step, and I was ready to go into the 3rd step, and I was really embracing the work, and it was like, this is amazing. Like, this work is phenomenal. And I really wanted to understand what it was about. And so I'd asked my counselor at the time, I said, if I go through this next phase, am I going to understand why the work we're doing here is so effective? And she says, you're going to get great results, but you're really not going to understand the whys and the what-fors behind this. So with that, she said, you can veer this way and get a certification in Neuro Linguistic Programming, which for me was a 2-year certification process to get the master's certification, but that's where I veered toward. And then I understood communication from a physiological perspective beyond just our spoken language, and grammar and punctuation and all of that, and it literally changed the trajectory of my career. But I was doing this and I was working, but I wasn't ready to break away from the comfort of dental hygiene. It was like, I really liked it, I loved my patients, and nobody could have replaced me. That was the belief at the time. Because we do have that ego going, right? So I kept going along, and then life took another turn, and it was time for me to it was time for me to step up and really do what I wanted to do. And so I went back and got my master's. I went back to school, worked part-time as a hygienist, went back and got my master's degree in organizational development. And when I did that, my goal was to start my own consulting business. So I was starting my own consulting business. I was practicing. My husband was busy working, doing his 14 jobs, because literally he was doing 14 jobs. And started my business. It was going, and then about 2 years into that, he was diagnosed with primary progressive MS. We were told that he would be in a wheelchair within 3 to 5 years and gone shortly thereafter. So again, it's like, what do we do? And so we stopped and took everything we possibly could off of his plate. I pulled my business to where it was just local, and that's what we were doing for a while. Things were going well, his health was getting better, and I'm happy to say tomorrow will be his 19-year anniversary of diagnosis, and he's in the best shape and health of his life, and we did none of it through traditional medicine, other than we needed the traditional medicine for that objective data and to show us that the lesions aren't getting bigger. Like, there's a place for all of it. There's an absolute place for all of it, and I'm grateful that we had the whereabouts to search out and to reach and find alternative approaches to helping him heal. And so things were again clipping along really well, but people were asking me, like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? And it's like, I didn't feel certified or knowledgeable enough to tell them exactly what we were doing. And with that being the case, I went back to school and got a nutritional coaching certification. And that led to, I felt more comfortable sharing the knowledge, the wisdom that we had learned from his health journey. And yet people would come to me and they weren't getting the results that we were all hoping they would have results, but it wasn't a predictable, it's like something's missing, but I'm not sure what. And so I'm going to keep doing and keep studying and keep researching, which led me down more nutritional coaching and certifications and different things. And then my father-in-law passed away. And when he passed away, we inherited a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that we proceeded to lose, which meant that we had a lot of resources, that a lot of shifts and changes again that took place. And yet we just kept hanging on. It's like we just kept trusting that we knew what to do. We held on to it. We kept going out and getting the help where we needed the help, and really listening within ourselves of what was right and what was true for us, which was great and wonderful. The lawsuit ended up settling. We lost over a course of many years. We paid them off and things were surfacing again. It was like, all right, we're back on track. This is it. My business is doing well. I'm doing a little bit of consulting, a little bit of hygiene, a little bit of nutritional coaching, and being a mom and a wife and all that other stuff. And then my life came to a screeching halt when my younger sister was murdered by her son. And that stopped me in my tracks in a way that I didn't think that I could ever be stopped. And no matter how hard I dug and how deep I went, I could not get myself out of that stuck place. And so I went to counselors, I went to talk therapy, I would talk to the priest, anybody who would listen to me, I would tell you the story, and do you have the answer for me? Because I really need it, right? And then after about 3 years, I ended up, this little voice in my head said hypnotherapy. And I'm like, yeah, pretty sure I'm going to burn in hell if I do that, so no, I'm not going to do that. And so, but the little voice kept coming back, it kept coming back, and it kept coming back. And finally found a local hypnotherapist that resonated with me. Sat and went through 4 sessions with her. First session was an absolute, wow, this is amazing stuff. Second session was, wow, we're making some good progress. And then she takes the month of August off to go ride her motorcycle, her Harley. And that's what she does. And she comes back in September. I see her in September. And it was kind of like that lackluster, like, why am I doing this? But that little voice is like, hypnotherapy, go again. I'm like, all right. So went again. And after the 4th session, I saw her on a Tuesday. On that Friday, I just signed up to get certified. And this is what I've been doing ever since. So back in 1921, or 2021, I should say, 1921. Let's age myself. So, but it all brought me to this place of truly, for the first time in my life, being aligned with who I was meant to be and why I'm here. And now I get to help other people do the same thing. And it's such a beautiful discovery process to watch and to guide people to their own truths and their own knowing. And so tonight we're going to be talking about this aligning with our purpose, the resiliency, because we all have it within us. We all have it. And sometimes, yeah, we need to go out there, but it's that voice inside of us, that feeling inside of us, that image that we have in our mind's eye that's there to guide us. And being really clear about what that is helps bring that joy and that happiness that so many of us are looking for. And so we'll go a little bit of the resiliency, defining that, the Neuro Linguistic Programming, breaking that down into some really just basic, good, fundamental knowledge about the physiology of communication. And then we'll tap into some facts around hypnotherapy, some of the common myths, and who and what can benefit it. And then we'll wrap it up with some questions and answers. So with that being the case, I have this belief in my heart and in my soul, based on my life experiences, that we were these little souls sitting up on a little cloud, looking down and thinking, I want that person to be my mom, and that person to be my dad, and that family to be my family, because they have something that they're going to be that I need to learn from them, and I have something that I need to teach them. So it's like this ebb and this flow, this two-way street. And so we get this, so there's this conception that takes place, and we get to be in this super cool little warm cocoon where we get to be fed and loved and nurtured, and get there for 9 months, and all we have to do is exist, and we get to be, and we're, in my head, it's like we're so excited about getting to come into this earth to be able to teach our lessons and learn what we need to learn so we can go to the next level, and poof, we come out into the world. And then our needs, and we go into this survival place. We need to be fed, we need our diapers changed, we need to sleep, and we're all dependent on all of these beings in our lives, right, helping us get there. But along the way, we forgot why we came into this world. And so I believe it's our mission to rediscover what that is. And all of these trials and tribulations, the joys, the happiness, all of that is there for a reason. There are no accidents. And in its own timing and in its own pace, it'll happen. And so I believe that our purpose is much deeper than what we do. It's who we are. We're that light, that joy, that idea of who we were before we ever showed up. So with that, where do we begin? Like, where does this all begin? And it really begins in this place of an awareness, of our awareness within ourselves. Like, is our awareness outside of ourselves? Is it inside of ourselves? Where does it live? And if you just take a moment and just close your eyes and just notice. Notice where your awareness is. Is it inside of you? Is it outside of you? Is it around you? Is it behind you? And just notice what you notice. With eyes closed, eyes open, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. But that awareness, if it's outside of you, I invite you to bring it inside of you. And to bring it inside of you into that place that's in the seat of your soul, that place between your belly button and your lower rib cage. They call that the filtering system, or the solar plexus. And that's where that energy of our body gets to shift and move and flow. And so when we keep it in that place, in that grounded and centered knowing, that's where the magic really gets to start to happen. So, and moving along, because really what people are coming and working with me on, whether it was in the dental office, whether it's in the chair with me as their hypnotherapist and guiding and holding space for them, people really are looking for that happiness, that joy, that void that they have to be filled with something meaningful, purposeful. And so, but the resiliency is a piece of the puzzle that helps us get there. And so what I would love to ask is, like, when you're happy, how do you know that you're happy? Is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it something that you're seeing? Something like what? How do you know? And but we'll get into more detail on that in just a moment. But that is the question. And if we can answer that question, then we know where we're going. Then we're knowing where we want. If people come and work with me and they have a goal, like one of the first things I'll ask them, how are you going to know you're going to get there? Not something outside of you, but like what's going on inside of you that's going to help you know intuitively without outside reinforcement of how you're getting there. Because when you get there, you know. That's like when you think about like when you're happy, that happiness, that inner peace, that connection, that purpose of why you're here and what you're doing. Like, so, and then once you have that awareness, the tricky part I have found is to stay true to your path. Because there's so many sparkly, curly, awesome things over here that you could go and grab, but it takes you off your path. Or there's these life experiences that disrupt your complete system. And sometimes we have to go outside of ourselves to go get help to figure out how to get back within ourselves and stay true to who we are. And there's a lot of science and research behind all of this stuff that we won't go into a lot of detail, but it is true. And again, this Viktor Frankl was a man of resiliency that I would have loved to have met this person. I would have loved his, that wish if you could sit down and have dinner with somebody he would be somebody I would definitely want to meet, for sure, because he was brilliant. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. Because that resiliency, it runs through us. It's in our mind, it's in our body, it's in our spirit, and it leads to who we are and why we're here and what we're doing. And so that'll tie us into this Neuro Linguistic Programming, and I'm going to give you just a really nice overview of what that means. And it's really understanding communication from a physiological perspective versus the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation that we were taught in school. And when we look at the research on that, it's anywhere from 7 to 25% of our communication is our grammar, punctuation, spelling, the rest of it. That means that we're missing, and we're never technically taught, even though we all intuitively do it all of the time, and the other 75 to 93% of our communication. And so it's understanding communication from a physiological perspective versus just the words that we speak, the proper spelling, grammar. And there's a quote that says, if you're feeling nothing, you're missing everything. And I love that quote because, again, most of us, of the population, like we cannot not communicate. Like even if we're not saying a word, we're still communicating. There's still that body language. And one of the things I recall when I was having this training is this crossed over look, like where the people are shut down. that's a philosophy, that's a point of view, but another point of view is if somebody is an auditory learner, when we cross over and do this kind of body language, we're shutting down the other systems so that we can hear better, because that's how we process, that's how that particular person processes information. And that's about 15% of the population, because 70% of the population favors the audit. No, it's coming. The visual. Thank you. I need all the help I can get. So, the visual modalities, where then there's the 15% that process kinesthetically, and the other 15% favor the auditory. And there's an ebb and flow of all of it, but there's those typically favored modalities. And so again, we're processing things visually, kinesthetically, auditorily, through our smell and through our taste. And so it's all combined like that. Can you recall a time like that scent that smelled like grandma's kitchen? Like those baked cookies, like just the memories that brings, like boom. So, and then so not only are we working from a visually through these senses, we're also processing at the same time, going through what they call what Neuro Linguistic Programming calls perceptual positions. First position is being in your body, having your experience and your perspective of the world. Second position is literally going into somebody else's space, into their body, picking up their energies, their feelings, and that's very common for an empathetic people. Empaths spend a lot of time in other people's space. I spent probably 20 years of my career in my patient's space because I didn't know I was doing it. But I can tell you at the end of the day, I was exhausted because I just wanted to help them. I just wanted to be there, and yet it wasn't healthy for me, and in all honesty, it wasn't healthy for them either. And once I learned how to stay in my own space, it was a beautiful thing for everybody. So, and then third position is more like sitting here in the chair and watching, like on a movie screen. So it's you're watching it from afar. And then a fourth position is more of that spiritual, out there, like universal, big global perspective. So then we get into what we call the logical levels of alignment. And oftentimes in therapies and this sort of stuff, we're working at changing environment and behaviors. So with an environment, we're wanting to shift that, which will then potentially shift the behaviors and shifts our capabilities within that environment and within our behaviors. And hopefully at some point we'll change our beliefs around it. And then that influences our identity, which then influences and impacts the spirituality. And what that is it's kind of like that climbing up the ladder, which is a lot more work than if we can start up here around even at identity and even belief systems, then it just has a ripple down effect. And so if you imagine climbing these steps, it's harder to go up than it is to come down typically. And so it's again another piece of this puzzle of communication. And so then we have these levels of how we process. We initially, sometimes we're out there doing what we're doing and don't even know that we're doing it. And so there's that unconscious incompetence. We're just doing what we're doing, and we do it all the time. We know people who are doing it all the time, but then someday there's ooh, I need to do something different. And then we go into this conscious incompetence, we're aware that we're not quite doing what we want to be doing, and there's an incompetency that comes along with it. So that brings us then, we start practicing, we start learning, we start growing, and that takes us to this, where we get better at it, where we're consciously competent. And so it's we're doing it. And then it's kind of like learning to walk or learning to drive a car. We didn't just get up one day and start walking, and we didn't just one day just get behind the wheel of a car and start driving. We went and got help, we learned how to do it, and then we gave ourselves, and nowhere along the way, well, maybe when we were driving, we might have scared people and gotten yelled at a little bit. I don't know how I would know that, but I do. But when a baby's learning to walk, all we did is love on him and encourage him and give him this, come on, you can do it. It's the same thing. It's the same grace that we need to give ourselves as adults and to give ourselves, our friends and our families. They're learning and they're growing too. Because what will eventually happen is we change these patterns of learning, we get to this unconscious competence level. We have a new way of being, a new way of walking and living and existing in this world. And that just becomes more and more fun because we're more and more awake, we're more and more alive, and we're more and more aligned with who we are and why we were put on this earth. And so that brings us into the hypnotherapy, some of the science, some of the facts behind it. It's been around literally forever and a moon. It was used by the priests way back in the day. It was used in dream temples back in the Egyptian times. There would be chantings that were done. It's still some of these practices are still done today. But what we're doing is when we're in that hypnotic state, we're going into the theta brainwave. And so it's very peaceful and quiet there, but it's also, we're more open to suggestibility. And with that suggestibility, we get different choices and different shifts that take place. And it can literally be that fast. We can change, I help people change some limiting beliefs that they have around whatever they have it around. And it's fun to watch it. It's so much fun for me to watch somebody come into my office feeling kind of like lost. And I don't know what to do, but I've tried everything and I need to do something different. And they come in and they literally walk out within no more than 2 hours with this, I got this, that was cool. They get this rediscovery, and I can do this. I'm gonna do this until I'm a very, very old lady because it is so much fun. It's so much fun. But it's been around like for a long, long time. And we blend, like I'm fortunate and I get to blend a bunch of different philosophies and different theories and help people bring their best version of themselves to life. And so this was so fascinating to me when I learned this. If somebody were to go and work with a psychoanalysis and getting work from that perspective, and there's a place for all of this, there's an absolute place for all of it, and so I'm not bashing any of it. But for most people who are coming and seeing me, they don't need a diagnosis, nor do they want a diagnosis. They just want to change. They want something different than what they're experiencing in the here and the now. And so, but after 600 sessions, there's a 38% recovery rate, where with behavioral therapy, after 22 sessions, there's a 72% recovery rate. And that is huge improvement, like a huge positive shift in the right direction. And then with hypnotherapy, after 6 sessions, there's a 93% recovery rate. And I get to witness that all the time. And it's so fun. It's so fun. In fact, I just am doing a beta program right now with a small group of ladies that we're taking them through this. They have a behavior they want to change. Along with that's coming with some belief changes. And we just finished up week 2 today, and it's pretty cool, like the shifts that are taken. So yeah. Because our minds are processing 11 million bits of data per second. Like that's a lot of information going in, but our conscious mind can only process 400 of those bits in that amount of time, where the subconscious mind is processing 27,500 times more information. And so if you think of like the brain, you probably have heard this before, but we utilize 10% of our brain on a given day. And what hypnotherapy does is it opens that door to all of those resources that have just been sitting back there waiting for us to access them. And sometimes we're going in and we're accessing and we're changing them. Sometimes we're letting them go because they don't serve us at all. And sometimes we're finding all kinds of new cool things that are out there just waiting for us to be able to develop and bring to life. And so this brings us back to the focus. It's like you're in this state that you appear that you might be asleep, but your brain is extremely active, super focused. And then we're with the interview process, we go through this, what I call the pre-talk. And in that pre-talk, I'm gathering information as people are sharing their stories and the shifts that they want. And we're starting to understand what it is. Then we integrate that into the actual therapy itself, because we go through a pre-talk, and then from a pre-talk, I invite them into the chair. And then from there, we go into an induction, which is very customized. And then possibly, not always, we'll do a deepener, which brings that mind that much quieter, quiets the body that much more, and then the actual therapy takes place.
Fly in the lens.
Oh, hello,
projector.
fly.
Projector in the ceiling.
Oh, it is. Well, hello. So, yeah, and then from there and then we come back through the emerge, and we have a brief talk afterwards. But I don't tend to like to talk a lot afterwards because everybody's processing, and I don't want to interfere with that process that they're going through. And so this is some of the really kind things that people have said to me recently that it just fills my heart when I get to have people say these amazingly kind things. And really, I didn't do the work. I happen to be the guide, and I happen to have the skills to hold the space. But the person that I'm working with is the one doing the work, like hands down. And it's so humbling to witness and to watch. And it's so equally exciting for everybody involved. So some of the myths and misconceptions about hypnotherapy is that only the intelligent, like the really intelligent people, can do this. And the higher someone's intelligence level is, the easier it is typically to take them into a hypnotic state. The cool part is everybody's pretty darn intelligent, and yet there's about 30% of the population that has a harder time going into that hypnotic state, and it's not that they can't do it, it's just that it's so new and so different that there's a different learning curve. Not a right or wrong, it's just a different learning curve. So meeting people where they're at is critically important. Then, under hypnosis, people are helpless and powerless, and that is not true. You are in control the entire time. And I will not have anybody quacking like a duck or doing any of that weird stuff because that's not what I'm here to do or my approach to therapy at all. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But it's just, if you can imagine your life to be a certain way that it's not currently, or something you want to shift in your life, hypnotherapy is a very, very powerful modality of helping heal and helping that come to fruition. Again, you're not asleep. The mind is very, very active. And there will be times people will go into such a deep relaxed state that they won't necessarily recall what the experience was, and yet the subconscious mind is getting everything that it needs in order to get the results that it's seeking. And again, I've witnessed that over and over and over again as well. So with hypnosis, depending on what we're working on, it can take anywhere from 1 to 20 sessions. The statistic earlier that it takes 6 sessions and you have a 93% recovery rate. That's again a broad spectrum study that was done, and yet there's truth to it. And some people it takes 1 session, and some people it takes 20, and some people it takes longer. Because they're choosing to, like I have one gal that I've been working with almost for 2 years now, and we have had so much resolution that she just keeps coming back. But it's so cool because she's also in that process is getting to where she's not coming as frequently, and she's wanting to bridge it out further. And because part of this too is learning, like we're learning to trust ourselves, we're learning to believe in ourselves, we're learning to know ourselves at a deeper level than we ever possible. But hypnotherapy is not a cure. So we cannot say that it's not used as a cure at all, but it's a modality to help heal, and it's used beautifully in conjunction with a lot of other medical and non-medical, non-traditional therapies as well. So it's another tool in the toolkit. And I will say that was one thing that the power of visualization in hypnotherapy, when my husband was diagnosed, and I don't even know that he was doing it on a conscious level initially, but he would imagine electrical tape. He was a construction guy. And so he would imagine electrical tape being wrapped around all of his nerves until one day he didn't need to do it anymore. And probably within another year after that, he was released from his neurosurgeon guy, for neurologist, for So that was pretty cool. And it just, again, was another reinforcement of the power of the mind. And it was like with my mom, when she was diagnosed, she was given 3 to 5 years, and yet 13 years later, because my younger brothers were 8 and 10, and it was really important for her to see her young kids graduate high school. And then it became important to have all of her children become married. And she made it through all but one. And so it was pretty cool. Let's see. Hypnosis is flamboyant or weird. It can be. And it's usually what you'll associate with somebody like at a fair, one of the local fairs. There's people doing their thing. Those hypnotists are extremely well-trained entertainers. They can pick out of a crowd, who are the natural entertainers, who likes to be the center of attention, and then they're going to pull somebody out of the crowd that they're not. They want to be back in the closet, like leave me alone. They're real introverted, but they get those people up on stage too because they're fun to say, oh, you're not going to work, you got to go, right? But then the ones that are natural entertainers, they go along with the flow of it, which is quite entertaining as well. So, all right. So under hypnosis, long forgotten memories can be retrieved. Again, that is a true statement. It's the distortion within it. I do a thing called life regression or age regression. And we can go back, and sometimes we even go past life progression and retrieve old lost memories that we can then have some healing around and some shifts and some changes, and then bring it into the here and the now. And what's really cool about it is kind of like we talked about with the staircase and the ladder effect. When we make those shifts way back in our childhood, let's say, it has a positive trickling effect all the way back to present moment awareness. So it's really, really a powerful tool. And you can't lie under hypnosis. If you can lie consciously, you can lie under hypnosis. And this ties back to previous myths of people feeling like they're not helpless in the client, because the client's always in control and they're always in choice. And I always encourage the people I work with, if you're going through this process and we're working together, the more honest and vulnerable you can be with yourself, the better off you're going to be and the quicker the results are going to be. And it makes a big difference. It makes a big, big difference, because what's shared in the space that we work together is in strictest of confidence. It just doesn't break the walls. So, and then people will say, well, I've never experienced hypnosis. And the fact of the matter is according to the science and the research, we all go into a hypnotic state at minimum twice a day. So for example, if you're you're hopped in the car and you're going to work, let's say, and you get from point A to point B and you have absolutely no recollection of how you got there. Has anybody experienced that before? That is a hypnotic state, and that is a time where your subconscious mind is taking over, doing its thing because it knows how to drive, and your conscious mind is then given freedom to create and I make the grocery list, get your to-do list going, plan a wedding, I don't know, but it gets, yeah. So it's really, it's a common way of being. And another piece of this too is we can always, there's 100 million different ways, I would say countless ways, of how we can go from Ashland, Oregon to New York. There's not a right or a wrong way. There's some ways that are faster. There's some ways that are easier. There's some ways that are way more scenic and relaxing, which you might want to do before you get to New York. I've not been, but that's up. And so there's a lot of ways of doing it. There's not a right or a wrong. It's just a different path. It's just a different opportunity. And on each opportunity, there's a learning, there's a discovery process that we get to engage in. And so you're not asleep or unconscious in hypnosis. You're always in control. If you choose to come out of a hypnotic state, you're in control and may do so if you so choose to. Because when the imagination and the willpower are in conflict, it's always the imagination that wins without exception. And so people often ask me, what is hypnosis good for? I can tell you, if you can imagine it, this is just a little list of what and how hypnosis can help. What it's not good for, though, and where it's not utilized, is somebody who is like schizophrenic, somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia, because there's literal physical deterioration of the brain, and it's out of the realm. However, we can also help with coping with those I'll call it disabilities, because that's the word that's popping in right now, and I know that's not probably ethically or politically correct, but that's what's popping in. But yeah, so it helps with so many things. And a lot of people, when I first started my practice, were coming to me for weight loss. And one of my favorite stories, and this was even before I was trained as a hypnotherapist, but she was really struggling to lose the weight. She had like 25 pounds she wanted to lose, and no matter what I was pulling out of my cap and she was pulling out of hers, the weight was not coming off. And so, but we kept talking and kept digging, and she had moved into a new home, and she had lost her prayer space. She didn't have her prayer space anymore. And so we started in her mind's eye just creating her prayer space in her new house. And so her homework assignment, her home play assignment, was to go home and recreate a prayer space in her own home. So she did that, and the first one, it wasn't anything like she'd imagined it would be. So she had the wits about her to shift it and move it to another spot. And after about 3 shifts, she found the spot, and it was like, this is it. And so she was able to re-implement her prayers and her meditative practice and all that back into her day-to-day life activities. And I swear she lost 25 pounds in 2 months like that. And that's all either of us could accredit it to, because it was so profound and so significant. And that's happened with numerous clients on different other things. And yet it all begins with rapport. If I'm not in rapport with you, you're not in rapport with me, I'm not in rapport with the clients, we're not going anywhere. It just doesn't happen, because we have to have that. It's all relationship based. When we base things on relationship and we meet each other where we're at, then I'm able to understand what it is that person wants, and I then am able to have the skills and know what resources I have in my back pocket to pull out that's going to be very beneficial and useful to the person that I'm working with. And so, I don't know if anyone's ever read this one, but this is an old-time book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I love that first seek to understand, then to be understood. It's a priceless way of living, and it brings in so much curiosity, and with that curiosity brings in so much clarity and so much wisdom and so much insight. And really, I think it will also, if we all live from a desire to understand before being understood, I really believe we could live in a very, very peaceful world. It is my ultimate goal to create world peace. That's my big why. And these are just some more very kind client comments that make my heart warm. If I'm ever feeling down, I just can go and read these really kind comments from clients and from people. And that brings us to thank you all for your attention, for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I also brought everybody, if you'd like, there's a handout on a self-hypnosis, so you can guide yourself into a hypnotic state. You're free to give me a call. I do free discovery calls to see if this is something that you would want to explore and do more of. But yeah, I offer one-on-one sessions. I'm offering small group sessions. Yeah, and there's a gal, I don't know if you guys ever participate in the Conscious Living Fair, but on the 26th of the month, we have the Conscious Living Fair coming up. And there's a lot of just amazing healers that are going to be at that, at Phoenix, at the, what's it called? Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, at the community center. And it's just a great group of people with big, kind, generous hearts, and just all in the right place. And so, yeah. So there you have it. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time. So.